All right, Skraby. So, who would have thought that somewhere in the middle of the country, aka the Ozark Lakes, would turn into kind of a pop cultural phenomenon? And I'm referring to, obviously, unless you've been living under a rock, the hit show on Netflix, Ozark. I'm really happy. Thank you for joining us. I hope you're doing well. You look great. I really
Oh,
love the
thank you. Thank you.
background.
Yes, very blurry.
I think I need to incorporate that. But yeah, man. So we don't have to do sports, which is cool. It's a little refreshing. So let's just
Yeah, it is.
kind of get into this. Fucking Ozark, man. Like, what did you think of it? Am I just overhyping it way too much?
I think I felt the same way. I was pretty pumped about everything that was like the last season. I couldn't wait for it after the first part of season 4 was released because of the way it ended, obviously, when Darlene and Wyatt just got like popped in the head and like the stomach. And Ruth, like, when she goes into Marty's house and she was like, "You're gonna have to fucking kill me."
I think she's gonna win an award. She had to have won an award for that, right?
Well, I read about that, and she was like, "I've done so much acting in between that being filmed and everything." She was like, "I really forgot how crazy I became in that scene." She was like, it surprised her how she like sold that scene. But Ruth like made the show. I think Ruth and Marty. I love those two. Those guys, those two together made the show, I think.
Yeah, it really felt so. Julie Gardner that's the character, that's the real life character of Ruth. She did win a couple awards. It was, I don't know if you had watched the like post production of the Ozark, how it was made. It was kind of interesting. Like, the blue contrast of the show, it just seemed like the light, it was dimmer.
Yeah.
And it was actually because a giant fucking black screen was over, like, protecting them from the sun. But no, Julie Gardner really, I thought she did an outstanding job. And it was interesting because she said in real life, like, she is nowhere near like what Ruth is as a character. She's very like reserved and kind of not scared, but doesn't have as much bravado or balls the size that Ruth has. And you make a really good point. I mean, she's the heart and soul of the show, right? Like, obviously it revolves around Bateman as Marty Bird and Wendy. It doesn't go as far without her, right?
It definitely doesn't go as far without her because she's the one who tied it all together. And if like you really think about, because I don't know if you like to do it, but I like to read a lot of stuff from the people who like made the show, so I can get into what they were thinking when they made it. And the relationship between the way that they progressed both Ruth and Marty through was, it was perfect. It didn't seem too rushed. It didn't seem too far-fetched. And Marty is this scared guy who doesn't take risks in the beginning, and then in the end he's like a cartel boss, like killing people that don't deserve to be killed, and he just is kind of like, okay, well, this is my life now. And then Ruth too. Ruth goes from being like just a white trash girl who lives in a trailer park to someone who like is like a kingpin or could be a kingpin of a drug cartel. I mean, she was really smart. She learned from Marty and she did everything for herself. That's why I think Ruth was like the part of the show that kept a lot of us invested, is because we all wanted like Ruth to succeed. But at the same time, that last season, we'll talk about that last like half season and what she went through. But like, you knew the entire time she was going to do something crazy and she was going to do something successful. So you kind of felt good for her, but we'll get into that.
No, you make a great point. And I couldn't agree more, because as an audience and, the viewer, I found myself, I think you did, and then you just look at kind of like, Reddit pages and like the internet and people that kind of just grew with this Ozark community. You found yourself actively rooting for Ruth, right? Like Langmore, she was cursed. It just seemed like, they're all scumbags. The family, just rednecks. It's living in just a trashy like trailer. I mean, no offense to certain people that live like that.
No, yeah. Well, I think they were trying to show that because that is the truth of places in this country. That's what some people come from, and it sucks. And it like, even though it's a TV show, there's still reality to it.
Yeah, so let's get into it. So we don't have to go like season by season, because at this point, if you're watching this, you've caught up. But let's just start with the fourth. So it was kind of interesting. It was 14 episodes. I wanted to ask you, they divided it up basically into 2 parts. Should they have done that? Was it a little too long? You find certain series where you're like, maybe instead of 10 episodes, it should have been 8. This one was 14. And obviously it starts off with the car crash, and then that inevitably came into the finale. How did it end for
Well,
you?
let me talk about the car crash real quick, because out of everything in the show, it was all real. Everything didn't feel like it was being overreached. Like there was things that were feasible. The car crash thing, like everybody should be dead in that car. They just like got out and walked away and went home. And I was kind of like, what's the point of putting the car crash in here? Everything else about the show is real, and then you're putting a terrible car crash and no one's injured. Like it's really,
They had like bruises, like that was it.
Yeah. And Marty's like, I honestly thought like one of them was going to be dead. And I thought that's where the show was going to go. But no, all of them just jumped out. And I get that's what Jonah, why he became part of the family again and all of that. But to answer your original question, I think they did perfect, because if you put the 14 episode season out, then you're not left waiting for more. And we were definitely left waiting for more after the cliffhanger of the first part of the fourth season. And I was ready for it. And I had rewatched everything leading up to it, because I wanted to just roll right into it again. And everything was perfect about it, I think. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think it was too much? Or because I get what you're saying. Inventing Anna is another one, like Julia Garner's in that one. And I think that was like 2 or 3 episodes too long. But I feel like I wanted more of Ozark when it was over.
Poor Julie Gardner. I just feel like if I watch something else I haven't seen that yet. That's on the list. I just feel like I'm going to typecast her as Ruthie. Like that was such a phenomenal role.
You won't because she's in that Dirty John show too. She's really good actress. I mean, she has 3 very different characters just right there.
Yeah. I think, it's interesting because this came at a time where, we're in the binge era where a lot of times people, it's not like the old age, like the Sopranos years ago, where you have to wait every Sunday for a new show. So taking it all in at once, it's such a roller coaster, with Javi getting capped by Ruth, Omar eventually dying, and then obviously Ruth too. It was the roller coaster effect. I guess I did like that. I guess, I don't know if you were like this, but just throughout the entire last season, I thought I was like crime detective, and I always like to predict who was going to die. I thought it was going to be Wendy, and
me too.
Maybe we can start pivoting this way. So to answer your question, I think the dad was kind of not a waste of time, but we could have gone with, the last part.
I can agree with that.
Of the season without him. I understand we're trying to bring the Ben aspect, which we're going to talk about. That's Wendy's brother in just a second. Getting rid of him, his kind of role. I thought you already had Mel, he was the detective from Chicago.
But I guess the dad did like make Mel want to drive further into it and like try to solve this case. So I guess they could have done it other ways, right? And the dad thing, I could have taken it or taken it or left it and been fine without it if it wasn't there. It wasn't that big of a deal to me.
Yeah, it just seemed like that kind of contributed to like maybe an episode and a half length of time where it could have been used for something else. So let's kind of pivot towards Wendy, because she seemed to become like the sinister villain. I would say the better part of the last half of the 3rd season, and then obviously all of the 4th, where it's just like you want Marty to get out. Like there was this like statement that just, hey, we're so close to getting out. We're so close. We just have to do this. And then she seemed to get like power hungry with like the politics with the pharmaceutical company. Was she like, how would you describe like how you felt like her role in this last season? Because I thought in that car crash, bringing this all together, I thought she was going to be the one that was going to die.
Yeah, me too. I thought she was going to die, like, because it wouldn't have made sense to kill Jonah or Charlotte. Like, it doesn't matter if they die. If Wendy dies, then it's a big deal. But I would argue that Wendy was the only character in the show that was as evil in episode 1 as she was in the last episode, basically because Wendy is the only sociopath out of everyone. She was able to fool everyone. She already had that political background before. Like, Wendy was super evil. She was really, and I really wanted her to die. I really couldn't stand her. I kept thinking, man, will someone just please take her out? Because all she does is, Marty says it, she does things for herself, and that's all she does. And then even when she went into the loony bin to try to get her kids back, the only reason she did that is because it would get her something. Like, she never does anything for anyone. She was an evil character, and I'm surprised that she didn't get cat at some point. Like, just like Javi, just boom, right in her temple or something.
Oh God, Javi, there's just so many like elements of the show and characters. Like it's so hard to try to like not jump around, but while staying
just jump around.
jump around. I think that song came out like 30 years ago today. I saw that on Twitter for some reason. Anyways, okay. Just staying on her really fast. So you mentioned she goes to she basically wants to be institutionalized in that crazy house. She hits her head, and for context, for context, the dad, the grandpa, Wendy's dad, wanted to take custody of the kids. I thought that moment on the stairs where she has like a breakdown, I thought that was kind of like the human element that we wanted. It wasn't like dramatized or ties, whatever. It wasn't, it didn't have the Hollywood effect. Because she has, with her character in particular, the whole rift between her and Ruth. Like, I don't know how you felt every time a scene would come on where she would drive that piece of shit van to like the trailer park, or Ruth would roll up in that Ford Explorer, truck. And you're like, truck. How are they going to pop off to each other?
I loved every minute of them going back and forth at each other, Wendy and Ruth, because they were both equally matched. Like, you couldn't outdo someone. If one person did something to the other is going to get you back, and it's going to be just as bad. And like Ruth proved that over time when she like took over the casino. That was another part. I know you said let's not jump around, but it's the only way to talk about it. But the like them taking over the casino, I was a little like, man, they are really trying to force this Ruth thing, and it was a little unbelievable how quickly everything came together. And I know it's a TV show once again, but still, like, I think it was the only way to tie it all in together and make it last. But I guess now that we're talking about it, if you think about how much wasted space there was, maybe there could have been fewer episodes and it wouldn't have been a big deal. But whoa, that was weird. My camera just went out.
Didn't we do an interview last year where your light went out?
Oh, but the camera went out that time, and I thought it was the light. That was really weird. I don't know. But I like you said, I think maybe if you break it down, those parts didn't need to be in it. I don't know how you felt about the casino takeover. Like, there's no way that they're going to put a former heroin addict on the casino license or whatever. It's just not going to happen.
Well, that's where, I thought it was interesting, and you kind of have to sift through the Hollywood aspect of it, of a former criminal with misdemeanors of stealing license plates and money and breaking and entering. There was a point where her and she went to go meet that Cody guy who was like, had good connections with the judge. And I thought there was a deeper layer to that if you peel it back. And it just kind of just goes back and underscores the importance of connections, right? Like, money and power really seems to be the centralized theme in this. And that was a perfect example of just knowing how important it is to know someone who's in a building, who's in a corporation, who's with a franchise, however. And again, it's going to be hard to give, because I think they portray her as like a 23, 24-year-old to get on board with the judge and the gaming commission to get, have the Missouri Bell. But, again, back to the whole dad thing of wanting to take Jonah and Charlotte back to North Carolina, maybe instead of mocking Christianity, which it kind of seemed like they were doing the whole time with baptizing Sam, who's a giant mama's boy, that could have been more focused.
His character is great, by the way.
Got his mom getting run over by. What is the death count? What off the top of your, what is the death count? Was there 25
I don't know. That's a good question.
Character deaths? Like,
there was a lot of deaths. You know what? You keep talking. I'm gonna figure that out.
I just like I was watching with friends and stuff, and like going back and forth in group chats with family and whatnot. It was just like, you kind of, maybe this is like the sports mind in me. It was like, okay, how can we like dilute this down to like an average? Like, is there like a 1.5 like deaths per like every 3 episodes or something? I don't know. Maybe that's just a baseball nerd coming out of me, but just overall, it's, the last season, the fact that, I guess we can just jump to where Javi died, because that's where now it's getting interesting. So we had season 1, Dell, he gets capped by Darlene for calling her a redneck in her house, and just he takes a shotgun barrel to the chest. You had Omar Navarro involved with the FBI, and now Javi, and then we'll get to his mom Camilla, who's another just killer.
Yeah.
Literally.
Stone cold killer.
Yeah, stone cold killer. So with Javi, before I ask you the Savagery ranking list between all the cartel members of the show or leaders, he was a fucking loose cannon. And it became, I don't want to say intoxicating, maybe overwhelming is a better word to describe his just nuttiness, that he was just going to fly off the handle at any moment when he kills the cop, when he kills Darlene and Wyatt, obviously, when he beats the shit out of the business school professor in the Chicago steakhouse bathroom.
Yeah.
I mean, just a total hothead.
Yeah.
I guess like with him, and then you go with Ruth killing him, I guess that was justified. It's like, oh, okay, you know, he kills her family, eye for an eye, and she finally has the balls to do it. And then it was like this overall, like, I don't know if you thought the same, but I just kept thinking in the back of my mind, Ruth capped Javi. And this is a huge kind of like element or puzzle piece that is just kind of being pushed to the side. Because that's the thing that Marty kept having to deal with, was like, he would finally get over one mess, and then this just outer force obstacle would come in. It's like, okay, how does he recover from here? So let's kind of jump back to the finale. So now you have, it seems like it's going to be a Hollywood ending, a fairy tale ending. They're going to get away. They're going to get back to Chicago. They're at that Met Gala type event, charity event for the Missouri Belle, their casino. At Claire Shaw, I believe her name is, the character in the show, the head of the pharmaceutical company. They're having drinks. Camilla, Javi's wife or mom, excuse me. I don't know if it's good. She's a woman, but did she seem more scarier than the other three? Because I have chills talking about it. The way she was like, "Do you know who killed my son? Do you know?" Like, I checked this. You know what I'm saying? Like in that moment, you're like, "Oh my goodness, is like, Claire gonna break?" And then Claire freaking rats and breaks.
I mean, I didn't expect her to hide that for 1 second. I knew as soon as she started, she was like, "I'm going to cunt you from your cunt into your throat."
Yes. I was like, I have a foul, vulgar mouth. I was like, cut her from the cunt to your chin. I was just thinking like,
well, Claire
that's
Shaw,
fantastic writing, by the way. But you know,
and we also saw Claire Shaw like in different parts of the show being completely oblivious to like the actual world that's going on around her and what she's doing. Like she like complaining on the phone about like something that they didn't get the right shades or something like that. I don't know. It was something weird like that.
It's very pretentious.
Yeah, very pretentious. And then they like show up at her house. She's like, "Oh, just change the gate code. Like that's gonna keep the cartel out, Claire. Like, calm down." But I knew right when she started in on her, I was like, Claire's gonna blurt this out before she even has to make a threat. And the whole thing, did you ever get the feeling that Marty viewed Ruth as like a daughter, or do you think it was more of a sister?
I viewed it as an apprentice.
So neither one of those. That's interesting.
Like I think
he needed that.
Yeah, an apprentice, I would say, with a loving relation. I wouldn't say a daughter, just because I think and we can't speak on it because me and you don't have kids, but there just seemed to be a better dynamic. I just seemed like he wanted.
You're right.
He wanted the best for her,
because
while also looking out for her intentions.
Yeah. In the end, he still had a wall up of some sort.
Yeah.
To allow what happened to happen. I mean,
yeah.
So we were talking about Claire Shaw and everything, and then they go after Ruth, and when the whole thing went down with Camilla stepping out of the trees, I was like actually kind of proud of Ruth for being like, "So what, are you gonna fucking shoot me?" And then she does it, and I was like, all right, well, at least you went down like a badass, like you have been this entire show.
Yeah. It was just kind of sad. I think, you know, if we get like a gambling mindset, you know, if there was like a live line on her like trying to survive, like it would have been plus 575, and her to die would have been like minus 2,000, you know?
Yeah.
But there was still an ounce.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah. You're just like pounded light, like, God damn it, accept the odds.
Yeah.
Like, so there was still a part of me in that moment. I was like, maybe she gets capped. Camilla, maybe someone has a gun.
I thought maybe like Rachel was going to step out of the bushes after she killed Nelson,
or Mel, or just some out of
some weird thing.
Yeah, but then it happens.
Marty somehow gets out there.
Yeah, or some like at some point, back to your whole thing with the relationship with Marty, like maybe Marty would have had a connection, like, hey, let's get out there. It's still like technically we don't know what happened to Camilla. I guess she just assumes the role of the cartel king. Like she has to take care of those giant Dobermans or those mastiffs, whatever,
those
the castle at the house,
bull mastiff or whatever.
Yeah. But I thought that like the cinematography, God, am I saying that correctly? Because she pulls the trigger and then the camera pans to Ruth and it's silence, right? And it just shows the bullet going through her, and it's obviously she's wearing a white dress, so you see the blood, and it's like,
I thought that was an interesting way of doing it too, because I can't remember seeing something quite like that, like coming from the gun kind of thing, where you see like you don't usually see that. You just see it. I don't know. It looked different to me for some reason.
Yeah, and it's just, at that point, it was like, okay, in one episode, you had Navarro earlier who was, let out. I mean, he's a whole separate storyline. He thinks he's escaping, and then one of Camille's guys who somehow has a connection in the prison guard, kills Navarro.
Yeah.
So I thought at that moment when Ruth dies, I was like, okay, you already had two giant character plots just die. Like, I didn't think like there can't be one more. I was like, maybe Bateman just writes and directs it to where the script pans out for them to get out. So that was an interesting part. And
I know that I was reading that article this morning from one of the guys who made the show about that final scene with Ruth and everything. And because apparently social media has major backlash about how the show ended, but I don't know how else you think the show could have ended. And the guy who made it said the same thing. He was like, yeah, we thought about keeping her alive somehow, but at the same time, I mean, if we're going to play this realistic show, she killed a cartel member, and in real life, you die and you get killed when you kill a cartel member. He's like, we couldn't look the other way. It would have killed the credibility for the show.
I think that's a great point. And I did the same. I listened to a couple podcasts where they had the showrunner on, and, I would say one of the MVPs or bigger moments, and we're going to get into him very shortly, season 3 was Ben, the brother. I want to say in season 4, even though everyone hated it, Claire folding and spilling the beans, I thought that presented a real human element where she was probably a trust fund kid that got everything taken care of, and she gets involved, so this whole time she's like trying to mask, not visualizing Javi die in her office, seeing his body get cleaned up. So I thought that little tie, even though everyone hated it, I thought it was perfect. And it was a good kind of segue into, like, eventually every good thing has to come to an end. In this case, it was the show.
Yeah, and of course it's going to be the rich, privileged white woman that's going to give up the information. Like that Claire Shaw was very annoying in that moment. She was pretty annoying the entire time because she had no idea what she was doing. She was making like massive drug deals and like not knowing what the hell's going on. But she was necessary, I guess, for that part of the show. Definitely.
Can we turn this into local radio really fast? Can we do a rankings list? So just really quickly.
Local radio, what?
Yeah. We got to do the power rankings,
Oh, I see.
So I just want to do the Savagery level cartel leaders. So 4 seasons, it seems pretty fitting. Obviously, a lot of people forget. We were talking before we started recording.
Yeah.
I mentioned Dell was the first one, and you were like, fuck, who's Dell?
He was pretty evil. He was pretty evil.
So I want to ask if you had to just quickly rank 1 through 4, 1 being just an absolute cutthroat savage, 4, you're still a murderer, but I guess you can have lunch with the guy or girl. How would you rank them? Dell, Omar Navarro, Javi, and then Camille, Javi's mom.
Well, I think Camilla, Javi, he was the most unhinged by far.
Do you think is he the first overall pick?
He's the first overall pick because he's also untouchable, and he is the only one outside of Camilla. We'll get to her in a second, why I'm ranking her. But the reason he's number 1 is because he did his own dirty work. Omar never did his own dirty work. Javi enjoyed the killing part of things. And when you enjoy the killing part of things, you go to the number 1 spot. And then I guess you have to go Dell because he also enjoyed killing things. But he was just like he wasn't a high-ranking member. He wasn't untouchable. So he would be number 2 just because he was crazy enough to kill people the way that he did, shove them in barrels in the first season.
Oh, acid. Yeah. They're like discover like the jaw, the teeth, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty nuts, but that's what cartels do. And then number 3, I would have to say Camilla, because she did kill Ruth and she did actually do it herself. But the reason that she did it is because Ruth killed Javi. So I don't think that she's a killer, or we see that she's a killer if her son wasn't murdered. And she also killed her brother, which I don't think matters. And Omar, the reason he's 4th is because he never had to do anything. He just ordered it. He didn't have to watch it if he didn't want to. He would just he would just snap his fingers and the death would be done. Although, was he there when Helen got just,
yeah, okay, I'm glad you bring up Helen really fast. Outstanding character. I loved her for some reason. I don't know if it's her just Amazonian height. Like she looked like she could have been like a small forward in the WNBA, and she probably also did. Like just there's something about the early episodes of The Office with Jan, just like that that dominatrix, like just in control woman. It's like almost attractive, or maybe it's just like the business.
I see what you're saying.
The business school like outfits. So yeah, so Omar didn't do it. I think Nelson did it. Nelson the Hitman. A lot of he deserves a cut. I like that guy.
You like Nelson.
For him, I don't know. I've been listening to like a lot of like writing podcasts lately and stuff, and it's interesting because it's just hearing like you don't think about those people that only get a couple lines, but he was saying and with the Writers Guild, like in terms of get paid and stuff, like if you max, like if you get a paragraph, like it's a great payday. So I was thinking like, God, Nelson has to do a lot of this dirty work. I'm hoping like in real life for how much he had to stick around, like hopefully he gets paid. Anyways, so yeah, seeing Helen get capped, that was Omar Navarro, who was like right there. And that was an outstanding cliffhanger to end season 2, where like the brain matter of Helen is in the hair of Wendy, and Jason Bateman just he's such a pro. Like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah.
Okay, so really fast. So you're going Javi.
So I'm going Javi, Del, Camilla, Omar.
Okay, my Savagery ranking list. I don't know if I'm a prisoner of the moment, recency bias. I want to go Camilla. I think that if she would have got more time, think about this. She ordered the hit on Navarro in prison when he got shanked. She's a completely backstabber. The reason why Javi is such a fucking nutcase is because he inherited the crazy gene from his mother, Camilla.
That's kind of a good point.
She kills Ruth. I mean, and again, it was so short. If it was extended another season, I think she could have been a real liability and just would have drove you crazy. So I want to go number 1. And again, the woman aspect, like I want to take her number 1. I'm going to go Javi too. Like it sounds like chalk, but God, as you mentioned, just unhinged. Just you never knew. Like there was moments he's just eating pastries and drinking coffee in the kitchen, and then
eating clams,
oysters, and killing the cop. Like that's just insane. Breaking in, and I guess I was happy he killed Darlene. I wish Darlene could have went out and suffered a little more. And she's a menacing looking woman, so good really for her character.
Yeah, that really was.
I guess third, I want to go Del. I honestly might go Del second. Because I think he just had to get killed off eventually, because I think there was just better characters to fill that role. Yeah. So I want to go number 1, Camilla. I want to go number 2, Del. 3, Javi, because he's such a nutcase. And I think with Navarro, Omar, yeah, I mean, with the snap of the fingers, he always just had people doing his work. There was a
now, who do you think
he has a heart? Because he wanted to get out, right? He's talking to the father. He wants like to be free. He wants to do the deal with the FBI. Then Agent Maya Miller just bones him and is like, "Yeah, you're arrested." So yeah, those are my 4.
Okay, I can see that. I don't know. I mean, Camilla, I guess I could only rank her on what I've seen, and she was only really a character in the last season.
The last part 2 of the 4th season, basically post Javi. That's when you figured out who that was.
But do you think Javi has it in him to kill his mom? Because that would tell me who's crazier. Because I know Camilla will probably. I don't
think Javi would have killed her, because I remember they were talking with Claire Shaw. You want to get the stock options, and the shareholders meeting wanted to sit in with her. I don't think so. But yeah, she's just again. Maybe just the scary, like having like a Mexican heritage, like in my family, like it's like when they're mad, like it's scary as fuck. So that kind of hit home. I wanted to let's just get to Ben really fast. I mean,
Oh yeah,
we talked about him way too much without actually talking about him. Season 3, Ben, Wendy's character, completely ballistic. I mean,
yeah.
And there's kind of a sensitive subject I want to bring up with you that we'll kind of cap off the convo with, but if we're like picking MVPs of every season, like he easily won MVP of the 3rd season. Is it because, and you can touch on this more, you know, he was dealing with mental issues, pills. He actually was an innocent lost soul in a sense. He was a complete lunatic. Like when he fought the maintenance guy doing the lawn because of the cell phones, and then the burner, and tells Helen. I mean, God, his impact was he one of the hidden treasures of the show?
Yeah. And the thing with Ben, I thought was really frustrating is that it sucks that people have mental illness. They definitely have. I mean, it's real, it's out there. And I feel bad for people who have severe mental illness like Ben does. But at the same time, his medication is there for a reason. And it doesn't matter if you don't want to take it. I'm sorry that if you want to live normally in society and you have that mental illness, you're going to have to take your medication. And medication is not something to be ashamed of. It's something to balance you out and help you. It's just literally a fact of life that some people's brains are out of balance chemically. And Ben was so frustrating because he kept doing stuff and you're like, dude, what are you doing?
You're like, dude, shut the fuck. When he buys the burner phone and
fuck, calls, man. and then the reason I think Wendy is so evil is because she cold-heartedly just left him at the restaurant. And then I'm glad that they kind of showed what happened.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. Yes.
Because I didn't expect to ever see what happened to Ben. I just expected he died, whatever, you know. Yeah. But then I thought for a second, I felt like, because Nelson played a great character because you kind of felt like he kind of had a heart.
Yeah. But he wanted to get out himself because he was like the chief lieutenant.
Yeah, but he had some brilliant lines, by the way. He was really funny. But I thought like for a second he was going to let Ben go. And then obviously he didn't. He made him sit in front of him and just shot him in the head. But I thought Ben was definitely one of the better characters, and it did further the show along in a good way because it set the groundwork for like the rest of what was going to happen with Mel and with Ruth. And Ruth was pissed at Wendy because Wendy left him, and all
Jonah
can slow his roll a little bit.
Well, it's funny because he's like a young Marty Bird, just like
he's totally a young Marty Bird.
Wendy flags his accounts and then has to get him like to fix all the offshore stuff. Yeah, no, you make a great point. I'm really glad you said that. It was well stated. He ultimately, Ben, his character arc led to like the birth of like 4 different storylines, right? Like for the last season. You just mentioned with Ruth, they were lovers and she was upset. I mean, she keeps just losing loved ones left and right. The Jonah effect, that was his favorite uncle. And the fact that Wendy had a hit ordered on him, big deal. The dad, like, okay. And then Mel's an interesting one because he comes in, he's like that new character that you're just like, dude, you came on way too strong. I mean, he's as relentless as the IRS. And at that end scene, because we never really talked about that, he's holding Ben in the goat cookie jar. Yeah. Are you okay with the Sopranos type ending? It goes black screen and then Jonah just basically you're assuming
the showrunner said people were complaining about the cliffhanger and he doesn't see it as a cliffhanger. And I kind of agree with him because we saw Jonah pointing the shotgun at him. Yeah. There was only one person with a gun. So you know exactly what happened. And I do love that Jonah is now a murderer on top of everything else. But Mel's character was great, and you're right. In the beginning, I hated him, but as he went on, I was like, you know what? I kind of want him to figure this out and stop the Bird family or at least Wendy, stop her because she was the one who was putting all that together. And in the end with Ben, it was like Wendy was the one who brought him in. I mean, he came on his own, but she kept him there. And she didn't give a shit that he died. Are we being serious here?
They're like handing out flyers at the school, and it's just so callous.
She was just happy that she wasn't. She was just happy that she wasn't going to be killed herself by the cartel. That's all she cared about. I really hated Wendy.
Laura Linney did just great. That's her,
She
you know,
did. She
real
did.
name. I just, God damn. I mean, can you quickly expand Mel? So
Oh, a
he has
Mel.
that option where, you know, Wendy and Marty can get him back into the Chicago PD. Everyone knows he basically went Super Troopers and wanted to get high on blow. And
That was a great scene, by the way.
his
Yeah.
morals get in the
So,
way.
like, you think because his dream is always to be a Chicago cop, but because he's in AA, you're really like when you go into recovery, because I'm in recovery. And so when you go into recovery, you have to put everything in your life aside, everything that you've ever done, and just strip yourself down to nothing and build yourself back up. And one of those things is to be accountable for yourself. And it really does, doesn't sit well with me when I know that I'm not telling people something that I should be telling them. And Mel, he went through this AA thing. He was definitely going to go back to drinking or doing drugs or whatever, because he would know for the rest of his life that he know who's murdered this guy, and everybody just thinks it was a crazy guy who got murdered, or who got lost or whatever. Like, you know, he just took off, and they don't know the real story. So in the end, AA taught him that his moral code was more important than his status. And I really appreciated that at the end when he chose that. I was like, wow, that is ballsy to choose that over your career, and knowing that money can just get you anywhere. And he turned down money. That was really a cool thing to see. And I actually really appreciated Mel. I'm sad that he died, probably because he probably got a shotgun to the face, and that never ends up well.
Well, Skraby, this has been great. I mean, kind of against the clock. Let me ask you this. So this debuted in 2020. And it feels like 10 years ago, because that's when, or maybe 2019. Really? I started watching it during the pandemic. So that's where I want to get to. If the COVID-19 pandemic doesn't happen, does Ozark explode in popularity like it is now?
Probably. I mean, Netflix, their hit shows find their way to the top. It always happens that way.
I mean, has it though? House of Cards, Orange is the New Black.
Well, House of Cards was great. House of Cards was great until the end, and I didn't even watch the end. And they have a ton of other shows, like Inventing Anna was pretty good. The new one, there's a ton that I'm forgetting right now, but I love a lot of those shows on Netflix. And I think that Ozark, maybe word of mouth may have been better than like actual, you know, people trying to find it or them marketing or whatever. I think a lot of people, because I found out through a friend, like, hey, if you watch Ozark, man, go watch Ozark. It's so cool.
Same thing. And I was hooked. I said, you know, it was like the Redneck Sopranos with like a twist of like House of Cards. Like that's what it reminded me of. And I don't know. That's interesting because there wasn't a lot going on in March, April, and May of 2020. And I don't think without the pandemic, it doesn't. I think it gets its hits.
Let me prove it to you. Tiger King came and went. Ozark stayed.
The Tiger King was the greatest documentary of the decade.
No, it was not. Please don't say that. Well, yes, don't say that. Tiger King was not great.
Well, it came, it went, it conquered.
I'm sad.
I'm kind of sad it's over. I genuinely enjoy. This was the better show I've consumed in maybe 10 years.